In a world where every dollar seems to stretch thinner than ever, there's a quiet wisdom waiting in forgotten kitchens, meals cooked with care, thrift, and just one pot. Today, we pay tribute to the resourceful cooks who turned simple ingredients into nourishing feasts, proving that saving money and feeding your family hearty, delicious food can live in the same pot. Depression-era potato and onion stew. There's a certain quiet magic in a pot full of bubbling potatoes and onions, their humble aromas weaving together like an old familiar song. The scent is earthy and sweet, a little sharp from caramelizing onions, all softened by the gentle simmer of broth. This wasn't just a stew. It was survival, simplicity, and warmth on a cold day, all in one modest pot.
Today I'm going to make potato onion stew.
Back during the Great Depression, when every penny counted and meat was a luxury few could afford, families leaned on ingredients like potatoes and onions, cheap, filling, and reliable, to create meals that could stretch to feed hungry mouths. This potato and onion stew is a perfect example of how frugality and flavor came hand in hand. Rooted in Depression-era kitchens across America, this dish made do with what was on hand, yet never sacrificed on heart. Potatoes, the poor man's bread, provided hearty substance, while onions added a sweet, savory backbone. A splash of broth, or even just water, some basic seasoning, and the long, slow cook brought out layers of flavor that warmed the belly and the soul. To make it, start with peeling and chopping 4 large potatoes into bite-sized chunks, and slicing 2 large onions thinly. These will be the stew's stars. In a heavy pot, melt 2 tablespoons of fat, lard, bacon drippings, or butter over medium heat. Toss in the onions, cooking slowly until soft and golden, coaxing out their natural sweetness. Add the potatoes and about 4 cups of broth or water, enough to just cover the ingredients. Season with a teaspoon of salt and a good grind of black pepper. Cover the pot and let everything simmer gently for about 45 minutes, stirring occasionally until the potatoes are tender and the stew thickens into a creamy, comforting hug in a bowl. Simple, thrifty, and timeless. Amish ham and bean soup. Imagine a pot filled with tender white beans, swimming in a smoky, savory broth, flecked with bits of ham that have slowly melted into the liquid like little pockets of smoky sunshine. The aroma alone takes you back to quiet farmhouses where wood stoves hummed and families gathered for a meal that was both simple and deeply satisfying.
I will be making a white bean and ham soup today.
Amish communities have long treasured this humble ham and bean soup, a dish born from thrift, resourcefulness, and the joy of turning scraps into something spectacular. In days gone by, ham bones or leftover cured meat were never wasted. They became the foundation of hearty soups that fed many with very little cost. Beans, cheap and nutritious, soaked up the smoky flavor, swelling with goodness as they cooked low and slow. This soup was more than just nourishment. It was tradition, a way to stretch ingredients while sharing warmth and comfort with loved ones. To recreate this soul-warming stew, start by rinsing 2 cups of dried navy beans and soaking them overnight to soften. Next, place a ham bone or 2 cups of diced leftover ham in a large pot and cover with 6 cups of water or broth. Bring it to a gentle boil, skimming off any foam that rises to the top. Add the soaked beans along with a chopped onion, 2 cloves of garlic crushed to release their fragrance, and a couple of bay leaves for that subtle, earthy note. Season with salt and pepper, but gently. Some ham bones are salty enough on their own. Let the whole pot simmer on low heat for about 2 hours, stirring occasionally until the beans are tender and the broth thick and flavorful. The result is a warm, rich soup that tastes like generations of frugal cooks whispering their secrets in every bite. Old-fashioned beef and barley stew. There's a hearty, comforting charm to a pot filled with tender chunks of beef, soft pearl barley, and rich broth that has been lovingly simmered until every bite tastes like a warm embrace. This is the kind of stew that smells like home, earthy, savory, with hints of herbs, and the deep richness of slow-cooked meat. In kitchens across America during the early 20th century, this beef and barley stew was a reliable standby, especially in colder months when families craved something filling and nourishing without breaking the bank. Barley, once a common grain in many households, added bulk and a slightly nutty texture, making it perfect for stretching a modest amount of beef into a meal that could satisfy a hungry family. The beauty of this dish lies in its simplicity and flexibility. What started as peasant fare became a beloved classic in many homes, prized for turning humble ingredients into something hearty and memorable. To prepare it, begin by cutting a pound of inexpensive stew beef into bite-sized pieces and browning them in a heavy pot with a couple of tablespoons of fat, be it butter, lard, or oil. This step locks in flavor and gives the stew a rich base. Once browned, add a chopped onion and 2 cloves of crushed garlic, letting them soften and release their fragrance. Stir in a cup of rinsed pearl barley and about 4 cups of beef broth, along with diced carrots and celery for sweetness and crunch. Season with a bay leaf, a pinch of thyme, salt, and pepper. Cover and let it simmer gently for an hour or until the beef is tender and the barley has plumped up, soaking in all those lovely flavors. The result is a thick, soul-warming stew that's both economical and endlessly satisfying. Southern chicken and rice casserole. Picture a bubbling pot where tender pieces of chicken mingle with fluffy grains of rice, all soaked in a gentle broth, scented with onion and a whisper of herbs. This one-pot casserole is the kind of dish that fills the kitchen with a homey aroma.
Home Chef, I'm showing you how to make the best baked chicken and rice.
Comforting, familiar, and quietly satisfying. Rooted deep in Southern kitchens, this meal reflects the region's love for simple ingredients, turned into soulful dishes that could feed a family without fuss or fancy. During times when pantry staples were king and meat was used sparingly, Southern cooks developed this casserole as a way to stretch chicken, often leftover or less expensive cuts, into a full meal. Rice, a Southern staple, absorbs flavors and fills hungry bellies, while the slow cooking softens everything into tender harmony. It's a dish that speaks of Sunday suppers and family gatherings where food and togetherness went hand in hand. To make it, start by sautéing diced onions in a generous splash of bacon drippings or butter until soft and fragrant. Add bite-sized pieces of cooked or leftover chicken to the pot, letting them warm through. Stir in 1 cup of uncooked long-grain rice, coating it lightly in the savory fat. Pour in about 2.5 cups of chicken broth, seasoned with a pinch of salt, pepper, and a dash of thyme or sage for a touch of earthiness. Cover the pot and simmer gently for around 25 minutes, or until the rice is tender and has absorbed all the broth. The finished dish is creamy and tender, a perfect balance of savory chicken and comforting rice, a true Southern treasure that's economical and endlessly satisfying. Scandinavian fish chowder. Imagine a steaming pot filled with chunks of flaky white fish, nestled in a creamy, gently spiced broth, dotted with tender potatoes and sweet onions. The aroma is fresh and briny.
To Ireland, seafood chowder. I was in this little pub called
with a hint of dill that seems to carry whispers of Nordic fjords and chilly seaside mornings. Scandinavian fish chowder is a beloved staple from cold northern lands where fishermen's families needed a simple, nourishing meal that could be made with minimal ingredients but maximum heart. This chowder has humble beginnings, often made from whatever catch was available, cod, haddock, or pollock, combined with root vegetables and cream or milk to create a rich, warming bowl. The beauty of this one-pot meal is how easily it stretches fish, which could be expensive, by pairing it with hearty potatoes and flavorful broth. It's a dish that warms from the inside out, perfect after a long day in the cold. To prepare it, start by sautéing chopped onions in butter until translucent and sweet. Add diced potatoes and enough fish stock or water to cover, then simmer until the potatoes are tender. Next, gently add chunks of white fish and cook just until they turn opaque and flaky. Pour in cream or whole milk to give the chowder its silky texture, but not so much that it overwhelms the flavors. Season with salt, pepper, and a generous sprinkle of fresh or dried dill. Let it heat through gently. Too much boiling will toughen the fish. Serve steaming, perhaps with a slice of hearty rye bread for dipping, and you've got a cozy, thrifty meal that's both rustic and refined. Irish lamb and cabbage stew. Picture a bubbling pot filled with tender morsels of lamb, mingling with soft cabbage and earthy root vegetables, all swimming in a savory broth that smells like a cool Irish morning after the rain.
A lamb and cabbage stew. In fact, it's the...
This stew carries the essence of Ireland's rugged countryside, simple, hearty, and full of heart. For centuries, Irish families turned to dishes like this to make the most of their modest larders, transforming humble ingredients into a meal that warmed both body and spirit. Lamb, often more affordable than beef, was a common choice, especially in rural areas, while cabbage grew abundantly in small gardens and fields. The marriage of these ingredients in one pot was not just economical, it was tradition. This stew was the centerpiece of many Irish tables, especially during long winters when every bite counted. Its slow, gentle cooking coaxed out the richness of the meat and softened the cabbage into silky ribbons that melted in your mouth. To cook this classic, start by browning a pound of diced lamb shoulder in a heavy pot to seal in the juices. Remove the meat and sauté chopped onions until soft and fragrant. Return the lamb to the pot. Add chopped potatoes, roughly sliced cabbage, and a couple of peeled carrots for sweetness. Pour in enough beef or lamb broth to cover the ingredients, then season with salt, pepper, and a sprig of thyme or parsley for a touch of freshness. Bring everything to a gentle simmer. Cover and cook for about an hour and a half, until the lamb is fall-apart tender and the vegetables have absorbed all the savory goodness. Serve it hot, with crusty brown bread to soak up the broth. A humble dish with a history as rich as its flavor. Pennsylvania Dutch sauerkraut and noodles. There's something quietly satisfying about a steaming bowl of soft egg noodles tangled with tangy sauerkraut, the kind of simple comfort food that feels like a warm hug from an old friend.
A Pennsylvania Dutch meal. This has been a favorite.
This dish hails from the Pennsylvania Dutch communities, where hearty, economical meals were crafted from pantry staples and preserved foods, especially during long winters when fresh vegetables were scarce. Sauerkraut, with its sharp, fermented bite, paired with buttery noodles, created a balance of flavors that was both comforting and intriguingly bright. This one-pot meal was a go-to for families who wanted something filling and flavorful without fuss or expense. Sauerkraut, rich in probiotics and flavor, was often homemade, preserved in crocks to last through the cold months. Combined with fresh eggs and flour for noodles, it made a dish that was humble, but far from boring. It's a taste of a simpler time when food was preserved, cherished, and transformed into daily sustenance. To make it, start by boiling a batch of soft egg noodles until tender but not mushy. While the noodles cook, warm a good amount of sauerkraut, rinsed lightly if you prefer it less sour, in a skillet with a couple tablespoons of butter. If you have a smoked pork hock or a piece of bacon, toss that in to melt slowly and infuse the dish with smoky richness. Drain the noodles and toss them directly into the sauerkraut pan, stirring gently to combine and let the flavors meld. Season with a bit of black pepper and, if you like, a pinch of caraway seeds for that classic Pennsylvania Dutch touch. Serve hot with the satisfying mix of tangy, buttery, and smoky notes, making every bite a nostalgic journey back to old farmhouse kitchens. Hungarian goulash, simple, stovetop version. There's a certain hearty warmth that rises from a pot of Hungarian goulash, where tender chunks of beef swim in a rich, paprika-spiced broth that smells like a cozy evening in a rustic European kitchen.
Which is bacon. I'm going to use a quarter pound of it. Now, most goulash recipes will start with...
This dish is the soul of Hungarian cooking, a celebration of simple ingredients turned into something bold and comforting, perfect for stretching tough cuts of meat into a meal that could feed the whole family. Originating from the plains of Hungary, goulash was a beloved stew of shepherds and peasants alike, prized for its deep, smoky paprika flavor and its ability to simmer slowly until every ingredient softened into harmony. The beauty of this one-pot meal is its simplicity and soulfulness. It's a stew that invites long cooking and even longer stories around the table. To make a classic stovetop version, start by browning about a pound of beef chuck in a heavy pot with a splash of oil or lard to lock in juices. Remove the beef and sauté a large chopped onion until golden and fragrant. Stir in 2 tablespoons of sweet Hungarian paprika, letting it bloom in the fat. Then return the beef to the pot. Add diced potatoes, a couple of chopped tomatoes, or a splash of tomato paste, and enough beef broth to just cover everything. Season with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. Let the pot simmer gently for about an hour and a half, stirring occasionally until the beef is tender and the potatoes soak up the smoky, savory flavors. Serve it steaming hot, maybe with a slice of crusty bread or buttered noodles on the side, and you've got a one-pot meal that's rustic, budget-friendly, and steeped in history. Old New England clam chowder. There's a salty, briny warmth in every spoonful of Old New England clam chowder, a creamy, hearty pot of comfort that recalls foggy mornings along the rocky Atlantic coast, where fishermen hauled in clams and families cooked them up with simple ingredients that spoke of the sea.
Clam chowder is easy and such a treat.
This chowder is a classic one-pot meal born from necessity and ingenuity, turning humble clams, potatoes, and onions into a rich, satisfying dish that fed generations through lean times and celebrations alike. In the coastal towns of New England, fresh clams were abundant and affordable, but the cream and butter that gave this chowder its luscious texture were luxuries carefully rationed. Potatoes added substance, while onions and a touch of salt peppered the broth with earthy notes. The slow simmer melded all these flavors into a velvety embrace, warm enough to chase away the chill of an ocean breeze. To make it, start by cooking diced salt pork or bacon in a heavy pot until crisp and golden, leaving the rendered fat behind for flavor. Sauté chopped onions in the fat until soft and translucent. Then add diced potatoes and cover with clam juice or fish stock, enough to just cover the veggies. Simmer gently until the potatoes are tender. Next, stir in chopped fresh or canned clams along with their juice and pour in a splash of cream or whole milk for richness. Season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of thyme. Heat through carefully, avoiding boiling to keep the chowder smooth and creamy. Ladle into bowls and serve with oyster crackers or crusty bread for dipping. Simple coastal comfort that's as thrifty as it is timeless. Rustic vegetable and lentil stew. Imagine a pot simmering with earthy lentils and a colorful mix of garden vegetables, carrots, celery, and onions, softened to tender perfection in a rich, savory broth.
Soup a million different ways. This is the one Luis likes the most, so it's...
This stew is the embodiment of frugality and flavor, a humble dish that has nourished countless families through seasons of scarcity and plenty alike. Lentils, with their hearty texture and protein-packed punch, were staples in many cultures, prized for being affordable, filling, and easy to store. This rustic stew brings together what was often on hand: root vegetables from the garden, pantry staples like dried lentils, and simple herbs to coax out a symphony of flavors. In many homes, it was a go-to meal that didn't demand expensive ingredients or complicated steps. Just a good pot, a little patience, and a love for simple, honest food. To prepare this comforting stew, rinse 1 cup of dried lentils thoroughly and set them aside. In a heavy pot, heat 2 tablespoons of butter or oil and sauté chopped onions, diced carrots, and celery until fragrant and soft. Add the lentils along with 4 cups of vegetable or chicken broth. Toss in a bay leaf, a sprig of thyme, and season with salt and freshly ground pepper. Bring everything to a boil, then reduce heat to simmer gently, stirring occasionally until the lentils and vegetables are tender and the stew has thickened to a hearty consistency, usually about 45 minutes. The result is a warm, nourishing pot full of earthy, comforting flavors, perfect for chilly evenings and tight budgets alike. Southern dirty rice. There's a savory, comforting charm in a pot of southern dirty rice. Grains of white rice speckled with browned bits of ground meat, onions, bell peppers, and spices, all mingling in a rich, smoky harmony.
We getting right into it. Now, I done made this several times, you know what I mean? But this time...
This dish gets its dirty name from the flecks of browned meat and vegetables that color the rice, creating a deep, satisfying flavor with humble ingredients. Rooted in Creole and Cajun cooking, dirty rice was originally a resourceful way to use inexpensive cuts of meat and offal, turning what might have been discarded into a beloved, filling meal. In many Southern kitchens, this dish was a weekly staple, frugal, flavorful, and endlessly adaptable. The combination of rice and ground meat stretched small amounts of protein into a hearty dish that could feed a family. The magic comes from slow cooking the aromatics until tender and caramelized, layering on spices like cayenne and paprika, and folding in herbs like parsley or green onions for brightness. To make dirty rice, begin by sautéing finely chopped onions, celery, and bell peppers, known as the Holy Trinity of Cajun cooking, in a splash of oil or bacon fat until soft. Add ground beef, pork, or a mix, browning it thoroughly and breaking it into small pieces. Stir in garlic, cayenne pepper, paprika, and black pepper, letting the spices toast slightly. Add 2 cups of cooked white rice and toss everything together, allowing the rice to absorb all those savory flavors. Finish with chopped green onions and parsley for freshness. Serve it hot, as a satisfying one-pot meal that's bursting with Southern soul and budget-friendly savvy. Depression-era creamed rice with raisins. Picture a cozy pot of creamy, softly simmered rice, sweetened gently with plump raisins.
You can eat it during any...
This was a modest dessert, or breakfast that brought warmth and a touch of sweetness to many tables during the hard times of the Great Depression. When sugar was scarce and fancy ingredients even scarcer, cooks relied on simple staples like rice and dried fruit to create a comforting dish that felt like a small celebration amid hardship. This creamed rice is the kind of meal that wrapped families in quiet comfort. The rice, cooked slowly in milk or water until soft and almost pudding-like, becomes a canvas for the gentle sweetness of raisins and a sprinkle of cinnamon or nutmeg when available. It was often served warm, a soothing start to a chilly morning, or a modest but satisfying finale to the day's meals. To make this Depression-era classic, start by rinsing half a cup of white rice and combining it with about 2 cups of milk, or a mix of milk and water, in a heavy saucepan. Add a pinch of salt and bring it slowly to a gentle simmer over low heat, stirring frequently to prevent sticking. When the rice is nearly tender, stir in a handful of raisins and a teaspoon of sugar or molasses if you have it, allowing the sweetness to meld with the creamy texture. Cook until the rice is fully soft and the mixture thickens into a smooth, comforting porridge. A dash of cinnamon or nutmeg adds a nostalgic, warming touch. Serve it warm, maybe with a splash of cream or a pat of butter on top. Simple, sweet, and thrifty. A dish that's as much about comfort as it is about economy. Amish cornmeal. Mush with molasses. There's a quiet, rustic charm in a hot bowl of Amish cornmeal mush. Its golden grains, soft and creamy, sweetened simply by a drizzle of rich molasses. This humble dish was a breakfast staple in Amish households, filling, inexpensive, and made from ingredients easy to store and prepare. Cornmeal, a hearty grain, was a trusted pantry friend, while molasses added just enough sweetness to brighten the morning without breaking the family budget. Cornmeal mush was cherished not only for its simplicity, but for its versatility. It could be eaten soft and warm, or cooled and fried the next day for a crispy, satisfying twist. This dish reflects a lifestyle of thrift and tradition, where every bite honored the hard work of growing and harvesting, and the joy of sharing simple food together. To make Amish cornmeal mush, bring 4 cups of water and a pinch of salt to a boil in a heavy pot. Slowly whisk in 1 cup of cornmeal, stirring constantly to avoid lumps. Reduce the heat to low and cook gently, stirring frequently until the mixture thickens to a creamy porridge, about 15 to 20 minutes. Pour the mush into a buttered dish and let it set until firm, or serve immediately warm. When ready to enjoy, drizzle generously with molasses or maple syrup, and if you like, a pat of butter for extra richness. Whether soft and warm or pan-fried and crispy, this one-pot meal is a delicious nod to frugality and wholesome comfort. Cajun jambalaya, economy version. Imagine a single pot bubbling with a spicy aromatic mix of rice, vegetables, and just enough meat to keep things interesting. A dish that's both a celebration and a smart way to stretch ingredients. Cajun jambalaya is a cornerstone of Louisiana cooking, born from the resourcefulness of cooks who used what was on hand, from leftover sausage to garden vegetables, all simmered together into one flavorful feast. The economy version of jambalaya leans on pantry staples: rice, onions, bell peppers, and celery, known as the Holy Trinity of Cajun cuisine, and just a small amount of smoked sausage or even canned meat to add depth. It's a dish that's bold in flavor, but humble in cost, perfect for feeding a crowd or saving leftovers for days. To make this, start by sautéing chopped onions, bell peppers, and celery in a heavy pot with a splash of oil or bacon fat until soft and fragrant. Add sliced smoked sausage or a handful of diced cooked ham, letting the flavors meld. Stir in 2 cups of long-grain rice, coating the grains in the savory fat. Pour in about 4 cups of chicken broth, along with a couple of crushed garlic cloves, a teaspoon of paprika, and a pinch of cayenne for a gentle kick. Season with salt and black pepper, then bring to a boil. Reduce heat to low, cover, and simmer for about 20 to 25 minutes until the rice is tender and has soaked up all the flavors. The result is a spicy, hearty, and budget-friendly one-pot meal that's as comforting as a Louisiana Sunday dinner. Pilaf with leftover vegetables. There's a gentle satisfaction in a pot of pilaf, where fluffy grains of rice soak up the savory goodness of sautéed vegetables and simple seasonings. This dish, beloved across many cultures, is a perfect example of frugality meeting flavor, transforming leftover bits of vegetables into a comforting, filling meal with just 1 pot and a few pantry staples. In homes where fresh produce was a seasonal luxury, pilaf was a way to breathe new life into whatever vegetables were on hand: carrots, peas, onions, or even cabbage, giving them a new purpose alongside rice. The grains fluff up with a light texture, flavored subtly by broth and herbs, making pilaf a go-to dish for stretching ingredients without sacrificing taste. To prepare this thrifty pilaf, begin by warming a couple tablespoons of butter or oil in a pot and gently sautéing finely chopped onions until translucent and sweet. Add any leftover vegetables you have, diced carrots, peas, or bell peppers, cooking until tender. Stir in 1 cup of long-grain white rice, letting it toast lightly in the butter for a minute or two. Pour in 2 cups of chicken or vegetable broth. Season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of dried thyme or parsley, and bring to a gentle boil. Reduce the heat to low, cover, and simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes until the rice has absorbed the liquid and is tender. Fluff with a fork and serve warm. This simple one-pot meal is a perfect example of how thrift and taste can dance together in the kitchen, turning scraps into satisfaction. Old Italian minestra with rice. There's a humble warmth in a pot of old Italian minestra, where tender grains of rice mingle with fresh or dried vegetables in a light, savory broth that comforts like a mother's embrace. Minestra, meaning soup in Italian, has long been a staple in rustic Italian kitchens, where nothing went to waste, and every ingredient told a story of seasons, tradition, and thrift. This one-pot meal reflects the Italian knack for simplicity. Just a handful of vegetables, a bit of rice, and broth, simmered slowly until the flavors meld into something deeply satisfying. It's a dish born from peasant kitchens where meat was scarce, but vegetables and grains were plentiful, turning modest ingredients into a feast of flavor and heart. To make minestra, start by heating olive oil in a heavy pot and gently sautéing chopped onions, garlic, and any combination of fresh or dried vegetables you have on hand. Carrots, celery, zucchini, or even greens like spinach. Add a cup of rinsed white rice, stirring to coat the grains in the savory oil. Pour in 4 cups of vegetable or chicken broth, season with salt, pepper, and a sprinkle of dried oregano or basil. Bring the pot to a gentle simmer and cook uncovered for about 20 to 25 minutes until the rice is tender and the soup has thickened slightly. Serve it warm with a drizzle of olive oil and a sprinkling of grated Parmesan if available. This minestra is a timeless, thrifty meal that invites you to savor the beauty of simple, honest cooking. Mexican rice and beans one pot. Imagine a single pot where fluffy rice and tender beans come together with onions, garlic, and a hint of smoky chili to create a dish bursting with flavor and tradition. This classic Mexican rice and beans meal is a beloved staple that's as economical as it is nourishing. In many Mexican households, rice and beans form the backbone of daily meals, providing essential protein, fiber, and energy on a budget. This one-pot wonder is a celebration of simplicity and resourcefulness, turning basic pantry staples into a colorful, hearty dish. The beans, whether black, pinto, or kidney, are simmered to tender perfection alongside rice, while onions and garlic add depth, and a dash of chili powder or smoked paprika gives it that warm, earthy kick. It's a meal that feeds families, fuels workdays, and fills hearts with its comforting familiarity. To prepare this dish, start by heating a couple tablespoons of oil in a pot and sautéing chopped onions and minced garlic until soft and fragrant. Add 1 cup of rinsed white rice, stirring to coat it in the oil. Pour in 2 cups of broth or water, a cup of cooked or canned beans, drained and rinsed, and season with salt, pepper, a teaspoon of chili powder, and a pinch of cumin. Bring everything to a boil, then reduce heat to low, cover, and simmer gently for about 20 minutes, or until the rice is tender and the liquid absorbed. Let it sit covered for a few minutes before fluffing with a fork. Serve with a wedge of lime, or a sprinkle of fresh cilantro if you have it. This simple one-pot meal is a timeless, budget-friendly classic, full of bold, satisfying flavors. Depression-era oatmeal stew. Picture a thick, hearty pot of oatmeal stew bubbling gently on the stove, its creamy oats mingling with whatever root vegetables or scraps of meat were available. A true Depression-era masterpiece of thrift and nourishment. During the hard times of the 1930s, oatmeal wasn't just for breakfast. It was a versatile, affordable staple that could fill bellies and stretch meals longer than almost anything else in the pantry. This stew was a practical solution for families who had to make every ingredient count. Oats provided bulk and a soothing texture, while vegetables like carrots, onions, and potatoes added flavor and nutrition. If lucky, a bit of salt pork or bacon fat would enrich the pot, adding smoky depth to the otherwise modest stew. It's a dish that tastes of resilience and resourcefulness, warm and filling in a way that only humble ingredients can be. To make this Depression-era oatmeal stew, begin by sautéing chopped onions and diced carrots in a heavy pot with a tablespoon of fat. Bacon drippings or butter work perfectly. Add diced potatoes and enough water or broth to cover. Bring the pot to a gentle simmer and cook until the vegetables soften. Stir in 1 cup of rolled oats and a pinch of salt, continuing to simmer until the oats swell and thicken the stew, about 15 to 20 minutes. Adjust seasoning with pepper or a splash of vinegar if you like a little tang. The result is a creamy, earthy stew that comforts like a soft blanket on a cold day. A reminder that simple food can carry us through the toughest times. Japanese ochazuke, tea and rice bowl. Imagine a steaming bowl where fluffy white rice meets the gentle pour of fragrant green tea, topped with a sprinkle of savory bits like seaweed, pickles, or salted fish. A simple, soothing meal that's been cherished in Japanese homes for centuries. Ochazuke, literally tea poured over, is the ultimate one-pot comfort food, blending the delicate flavors of tea with the hearty warmth of rice and modest toppings that transform everyday ingredients into a quiet feast. Traditionally, ochazuke was a way to use leftover rice and simple pantry staples, creating a nourishing dish that was both quick and gentle on the budget. It's the kind of meal you might reach for after a long day or as a light breakfast, offering a moment of calm and satisfaction without fuss or fanfare. To prepare ochazuke, start with a bowl of steamed white rice. Fresh or leftover works beautifully. Heat a cup of green tea, such as sencha or hojicha, and gently pour it over the rice. Top with savory garnishes like small pieces of nori, seaweed, pickled plum, umeboshi, toasted sesame seeds, or flaked salted salmon if available. A dash of soy sauce or a sprinkle of furikake seasoning adds extra depth. This simple assembly transforms plain rice and tea into a warm, comforting bowl that's nourishing, budget-friendly, and steeped in tradition. Welsh rarebit casserole, rice version. Picture a cozy dish where creamy melted cheese blankets fluffy rice, infused with the sharp tang of mustard and a splash of ale or milk. An unexpected twist on the classic Welsh rarebit, transformed into a comforting, budget-friendly casserole. This one-pot meal takes the spirit of the beloved British pub snack and stretches it into a filling dinner, perfect for chilly evenings when simple ingredients need to shine. Welsh rarebit was traditionally a savory cheese sauce served over toasted bread, often enjoyed by workers and families looking for a cheap but satisfying meal. This casserole adaptation, swapping bread for rice, arose as a clever way to stretch cheese and create a hearty dish that's easy to prepare and economical without sacrificing flavor. To make it, cook 1 cup of white rice until tender and set aside. In a saucepan, melt 2 tablespoons of butter and stir in 2 tablespoons of flour to create a roux. Slowly whisk in 1 cup of milk or ale, cooking gently until the sauce thickens. Stir in 1½ cups of sharp cheddar cheese, a teaspoon of dry mustard, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce, stirring until smooth and creamy. Season with salt and pepper to taste. Combine the cooked rice with the cheese sauce, then pour everything into a buttered baking dish. Bake in a moderate oven for 20 minutes or until the top is golden and bubbly. The result is a rich, comforting casserole that's an ode to thrift and taste. Simple ingredients transformed into a satisfying feast. Old German spätzle and onion skillet. Imagine a rustic skillet filled with tender, golden spätzle noodles, tossed with caramelized onions that fill the kitchen with a sweet, savory aroma. This simple dish hails from the heart of German kitchens, where spätzle was a beloved, budget-friendly staple. Made from just flour, eggs, and water, spätzle noodles are quick to whip up and perfect for soaking up rich flavors, making them the perfect canvas for this one-pot meal. In many German homes, spätzle was served as a humble accompaniment or main dish, especially during times when meat was scarce or expensive. The slow-cooked onions bring out their natural sweetness, adding depth to the chewy noodles and transforming this dish into a satisfying, comforting classic. It's a recipe rooted in tradition and thrift, relying on pantry staples, but delivering big on flavor. To make this dish, start by preparing the spätzle dough. Whisk together 2 cups of flour, 2 eggs, and about ½ cup of water or milk until smooth and thick. Bring a large pot of salted water to a boil, then drop small spoonfuls of dough into the water, cooking until the spätzle float to the surface. Drain and set aside. Meanwhile, in a large skillet, melt 2 tablespoons of butter and slowly sauté thinly sliced onions over medium-low heat until golden brown and caramelized, about 20 minutes. Toss the cooked spätzle into the skillet, stirring to combine and warm through. Season with salt, pepper, and a sprinkle of fresh parsley if you have it. Serve hot for a hearty, economical meal that tastes like home and history all in one bite. Midwestern tuna noodle casserole. Imagine a cozy casserole fresh from the oven, bubbling with tender egg noodles, flaky tuna, and a creamy mushroom sauce, all topped with a golden crust of crunchy breadcrumbs or crushed crackers. This Midwestern classic has been a comforting family favorite for decades, born from a need for simple, affordable meals that could feed a crowd without fuss or frills. Tuna noodle casserole made its mark during the mid-20th century as canned tuna became a pantry staple, offering a cheap source of protein that paired perfectly with inexpensive egg noodles and pantry basics like cream of mushroom soup. This dish combines convenience and heart with a creamy, savory sauce that holds everything together, making it feel like a warm embrace on a chilly evening. To prepare, start by boiling 2 cups of egg noodles until just tender, then drain and set aside. In a large bowl, mix together 1 can of drained tuna, a cup of cream of mushroom soup, or make your own white sauce for a fresher touch, and a splash of milk to loosen the mixture. Stir in the cooked noodles and half a cup of frozen peas for a pop of color and sweetness. Pour the mixture into a buttered baking dish. Top with a crunchy layer of breadcrumbs or crushed crackers mixed with a bit of melted butter, and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 minutes until bubbly and golden. This casserole is a nostalgic, thrifty, one-pot wonder that turns simple pantry staples into a hearty, satisfying meal. Old-school American goulash, macaroni and meat sauce. There's a nostalgic comfort in a pot of American goulash, where tender elbow macaroni swims in a rich tomatoey meat sauce, seasoned with simple herbs and spices. This humble dish has been a staple in many homes since the early 20th century, loved for its ease, economy, and the way it fills the house with a mouth-watering aroma that promises a hearty meal. Unlike its Hungarian namesake, American goulash is a straightforward one-pot wonder. Ground beef browned with onions and garlic, simmered with tomatoes and a splash of broth, and combined with pasta that soaks up all those savory flavors. It's a recipe born from frugality, perfect for stretching inexpensive ground meat into a satisfying family dinner. To make it, start by browning a pound of ground beef in a large pot, breaking it up as it cooks. Add a chopped onion and a couple of minced garlic cloves, cooking until softened and fragrant. Stir in a can of crushed tomatoes, a cup of beef broth or water, and season with salt, pepper, and a teaspoon of paprika or Italian seasoning for warmth. Bring to a simmer, then add 2 cups of uncooked elbow macaroni. Cover and cook gently, stirring occasionally until the pasta is tender and the sauce thickens, about 20 minutes. Serve hot with a sprinkle of shredded cheese if you have it. This old-school American goulash is a perfect example of how a few simple ingredients can come together to create a timeless, budget-friendly comfort meal. Amish chicken and noodle soup. Imagine a pot simmering with tender pieces of chicken, wide homemade noodles, and sweet onions all mingling in a clear, savory broth that smells like a warm hug from a simpler time. Amish chicken and noodle soup is a beloved comfort food in Pennsylvania Dutch country, where family and tradition are at the heart of every meal. This humble one-pot dish makes the most of fresh eggs, homemade noodles, and whatever chicken was on hand, often from backyard flocks or leftover roasts. The beauty of this soup lies in its simplicity and depth of flavor. The noodles, rolled thin and cut wide, soak up the rich broth, while the chicken adds nourishing protein without heaviness. Onions and herbs give the soup a gentle sweetness, making it perfect for chilly days or when comfort is needed most. To prepare it, start by simmering a whole chicken or chicken pieces in water with salt, pepper, and a few bay leaves until the meat is tender and the broth fragrant, about an hour. Remove the chicken, shred the meat, and strain the broth. In the same pot, bring the broth back to a simmer and add thinly rolled wide egg noodles made from simple dough of flour, eggs, and water. Cook the noodles in the broth until tender, about 8 minutes. Return the shredded chicken to the pot and add sautéed onions and chopped fresh parsley for brightness. Heat through gently and serve steaming hot. This Amish chicken and noodle soup is a timeless, frugal, one-pot meal that warms both belly and soul. Italian minestrone with pasta. Imagine a vibrant pot bubbling with colorful vegetables, tender beans, and small pasta shapes swimming in a fragrant tomato broth. The heart of Italian peasant cooking that's as economical as it is nourishing. Minestrone has long been a symbol of making the most of what's available, turning seasonal vegetables and pantry staples into a warming, filling one-pot meal that feeds the whole family. This stew was a staple in many Italian households, where nothing went to waste and fresh produce was used at its peak. Pasta adds a comforting texture and helps stretch the meal, while beans provide protein and heft, making minestrone a complete, budget-friendly dinner. To prepare this classic, start by heating olive oil in a large pot and sautéing diced onions, carrots, celery, and garlic until fragrant and softened. Add diced tomatoes, fresh or canned, and vegetable or chicken broth to cover. Toss in a cup of dried beans if you have time to soak them in advance, or canned beans for convenience. Add a handful of small pasta shapes like ditalini or elbow macaroni during the last 10 minutes of cooking so they don't overcook. Season with salt, pepper, and a sprinkle of dried oregano or basil. Cook until the beans are tender and the flavors meld, about 45 minutes to an hour. Serve hot, with a drizzle of olive oil, or a sprinkle of grated Parmesan if available. This Italian minestrone is a timeless one-pot meal that's humble, hearty, and bursting with garden-fresh goodness. Southern grits and greens. Imagine a warm bowl of creamy grits, soft and buttery, topped with a generous helping of sautéed greens that bring a fresh, slightly bitter contrast. This one-pot meal is a beloved Southern comfort that's both economical and deeply satisfying. Grits, made from ground corn, have long been a staple in Southern kitchens, prized for their affordability and versatility, while leafy greens like collards or mustard greens provide nutrition and a peppery bite. This dish was a practical way to stretch simple ingredients into a meal that filled bellies and warmed hearts. Slow-cooked greens infused with garlic and a bit of fat, bacon grease, or butter lend richness to the plate, while grits offer a soft, creamy base that's easy to make with just cornmeal and water or milk. To make it, start by bringing 4 cups of water and a pinch of salt to a boil. Slowly whisk in 1 cup of stone-ground cornmeal or grits, reducing the heat to low and stirring frequently to avoid lumps. Cook gently until thick and creamy, about 20 to 30 minutes. While the grits cook, sauté chopped garlic and onions in a skillet with a tablespoon of bacon grease or butter. Add chopped greens, seasoning with salt, pepper, and a splash of vinegar to brighten the flavors. Cook the greens until tender and vibrant. Serve the grits topped with the sautéed greens for a meal that's simple, hearty, and steeped in Southern tradition. Scandinavian kelp noodle stew. Picture a steaming pot of kelp noodles tenderly simmered with potatoes, carrots, and a splash of creamy broth, infused with the fresh, briny notes of the sea. This Scandinavian one-pot stew reflects the resourcefulness of coastal communities where seaweed was a staple ingredient, cherished for its nutrition and ability to add flavor and texture without adding cost. Kelp noodles, made from edible seaweed, have been harvested and used in Nordic kitchens for generations. Combined with root vegetables and a simple creamy base, this stew delivers a uniquely earthy and ocean-fresh taste that's both nourishing and economical. A perfect dish for cold northern winters when fresh ingredients were scarce. To prepare, start by boiling diced potatoes and carrots in salted water until just tender. Add washed kelp noodles and simmer briefly to warm through as they cook quickly. In a separate pan, gently heat some butter and stir in a splash of cream or milk, seasoning with salt, white pepper, and a pinch of dill or thyme. Pour this creamy mixture into the pot with vegetables and kelp noodles, stirring gently to combine. Heat through without boiling to keep the cream smooth. Serve hot, with hearty rye bread on the side, to soak up every drop of this humble, flavorful stew, a true taste of Scandinavian thrift and tradition. Depression-era buckwheat pancakes and gravy, one-pan adaptation. Imagine a skillet sizzling with hearty, nutty buckwheat pancakes, their edges crisp and golden, paired with a savory onion gravy bubbling gently alongside. A clever one-pan meal, born from necessity during the Great Depression. Buckwheat, an inexpensive and nutritious grain, was a pantry staple for many families who needed to stretch their food budget without sacrificing flavor or sustenance. This dish transforms the classic breakfast pancake into a full meal by cooking savory gravy in the same pan, saving time, dishes, and money. The pancakes provide a rich, earthy base, while the gravy, made from simple ingredients like onions, broth, and flour, adds warmth and depth. It's a filling, satisfying dish that recalls a time when cooks made every bite count. To make it, start by mixing 1 cup of buckwheat flour with a pinch of salt, a teaspoon of baking powder, and enough milk or water to form a thick batter. Heat a skillet and cook small pancakes until bubbles form and edges crisp. Then flip and brown the other side. Remove the pancakes and set aside. In the same skillet, melt a tablespoon of fat, butter, lard, or bacon drippings. Add sliced onions, and cook until soft and caramelized. Sprinkle in a tablespoon of flour to make a roux, then slowly whisk in about a cup of broth, stirring until the gravy thickens. Season with salt and pepper. Serve the gravy poured over warm buckwheat pancakes for a hearty, thrifty one-pan meal that's steeped in history and flavor. Navy bean soup with ham hock. Imagine a thick, hearty pot simmering with creamy navy beans and a smoky ham hock that slowly releases its rich flavor into the broth. This soup is the essence of comfort and thrift, a classic from kitchens where nothing was wasted and every ingredient counted. Navy beans, small and mild, were staples in many pantries, prized for their affordability and nourishment, while a ham hock added smoky depth without the expense of prime cuts. This soup harks back to times when families stretched leftovers and inexpensive staples into meals that fed many with little cost. The long, slow simmer melds the beans and meat into a velvety, savory broth that tastes like history and home. To prepare, soak 2 cups of dried navy beans overnight and drain. Place them in a large pot with a ham hock, chopped onions, garlic cloves, and enough water or broth to cover. Bring to a boil, then reduce heat and simmer gently for about 2 hours until the beans are tender and the meat falling off the bone. Season with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. Remove the ham hock, shred the meat, and return it to the pot. Serve hot with rustic bread for dipping, a humble, thrifty meal that warms both body and spirit. Black-eyed peas and collards, 1 pot. Picture a steaming pot where creamy black-eyed peas and tender collard greens come together in a savory broth, infused with smoky bits of ham or bacon. This dish is a Southern classic, rich in history and flavor, known for its ability to stretch simple ingredients into a feast that feeds the whole family without emptying the wallet. Black-eyed peas, often enjoyed on New Year's Day for luck and prosperity, are inexpensive, protein-packed legumes that cook up creamy and mild. Collard greens add a hearty, slightly bitter note that balances the dish beautifully, while the smoky meat adds depth and warmth. Together, they create a one-pot meal that's both nutritious and soul-satisfying. To make it, start by rinsing 1 cup of dried black-eyed peas and soaking them for a few hours if time allows. In a large pot, sauté chopped onions and garlic in a bit of bacon fat or oil until fragrant. Add diced smoked ham or bacon, cooking briefly to release flavor. Drain the peas and add them to the pot with chopped collard greens, covering everything with water or broth. Season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of crushed red pepper for a gentle kick. Simmer gently for about an hour, or until the peas are tender and the greens softened. Serve piping hot with cornbread or rice for a hearty, budget-friendly meal steeped in tradition. Amish split pea soup. Imagine a thick, golden green pot filled with tender split peas, chunks of smoky ham, and soft vegetables, simmering slowly until every spoonful tastes like comfort itself. This soup has long been a favorite in Amish kitchens, where simplicity, thrift, and hearty flavors come together in one modest pot. Split peas, inexpensive and nourishing, make for a filling base, while the ham adds depth and a touch of smoky sweetness. In Amish homes, meals like this were born from necessity, using every bit of leftover meat and dried peas stored from the harvest. This soup was not just food, it was warmth for the soul and strength for the day ahead. To prepare, rinse 1 cup of dried split peas and add them to a large pot with diced onions, carrots, and celery. Toss in a ham bone or diced leftover ham and cover everything with water or broth. Bring to a boil, then reduce heat and simmer gently for about 2 hours, stirring occasionally until the peas break down into a creamy texture and the flavors meld. Season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of thyme or bay leaf. Remove the ham bone before serving, shredding any meat left behind back into the soup. Ladle into bowls and enjoy a timeless, thrifty meal that honors tradition and thrift in every bite. Mexican frijoles de la olla. Picture a big pot simmering with tender pinto beans, infused with the earthy aroma of garlic, onions, and a touch of cumin, a simple, beloved staple in Mexican kitchens for generations. Frijoles de la olla, or beans from the pot, is a one-pot meal that embodies the heart of Mexican home cooking, inexpensive, nutritious, and endlessly versatile. This dish was a daily necessity for many families, relying on dried beans, soaked and cooked slowly to develop a creamy texture and deep flavor. Often served with tortillas, rice, or fresh salsa, these beans provide protein and fiber, making them the cornerstone of countless meals. To make frijoles de la olla, start by rinsing 2 cups of dried pinto beans and soaking them overnight. Drain and place the beans in a large pot with chopped onions, garlic cloves, and a teaspoon of ground cumin. Cover with water and bring to a boil, then reduce heat to a simmer. Cook gently for about 2 hours, or until the beans are soft and creamy, adding more water as needed to keep them covered. Season with salt near the end of cooking to avoid toughening the skins. Serve the beans as a hearty side dish, or mash some for refried beans. This one-pot meal is a testament to the power of simple ingredients and slow cooking. Depression-era lentil and carrot stew. Imagine a thick, hearty pot filled with tender lentils and sweet chunks of carrot, simmered slowly until the flavors meld into a warming, nourishing stew. During the Great Depression, this simple lentil and carrot stew was a lifesaver for many families, offering a protein-rich, affordable meal made from pantry staples that could stretch to feed hungry mouths. Lentils, inexpensive and quick cooking, paired with carrots for a touch of natural sweetness, created a dish that was both economical and satisfying. The slow simmer softened everything into a creamy, comforting meal that required little more than a pot, water, and a few basic seasonings. To make it, rinse 1 cup of lentils and set aside. In a heavy pot, sauté chopped onions and garlic in a tablespoon of fat, bacon drippings, butter, or oil until soft. Add diced carrots and the lentils, stirring to combine. Pour in 4 cups of water or broth. Season with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf, and bring to a boil. Reduce heat to low and simmer gently, uncovered, for about 30 to 40 minutes until the lentils are tender and the stew thickens. Remove the bay leaf before serving. This Depression-era stew is a simple, humble reminder that thrift and flavor can live happily together in one pot. French cassoulet-inspired economy pot. Imagine a simmering pot filled with tender white beans, bits of pork, and fragrant herbs, slowly melding into a rich, rustic stew that speaks of French country kitchens and frugal creativity. This cassoulet-inspired economy pot is a pared-down version of the classic dish, crafted to use affordable ingredients and one-pot cooking to deliver deep, comforting flavors without the fuss. Originating in the southwest of France, cassoulet traditionally used preserved meats and beans to sustain families through harsh winters. This version embraces that spirit, relying on simple staples like dried beans, inexpensive cuts of pork or sausage, and aromatic vegetables, all slowly cooked to tender perfection. To prepare, soak 1 cup of dried white beans overnight and drain. In a heavy pot, brown diced pork shoulder or sausage pieces in a splash of oil, then remove and set aside. Sauté chopped onions, carrots, and garlic in the same pot until softened. Return the meat to the pot along with the beans and enough broth or water to cover. Add a bouquet garni of thyme, bay leaf, and parsley tied together, seasoning with salt and pepper. Simmer gently for about 2 hours, stirring occasionally until the beans are creamy and the meat is tender. Serve hot with crusty bread for dipping. This humble one-pot meal is a celebration of thrift, tradition, and slow-cooked goodness. Scandinavian pea soup, split pea. Imagine a thick, golden green pot of split pea soup simmering slowly on a chilly Nordic afternoon, filling the air with earthy, comforting aromas. This humble dish has long been a staple in Scandinavian homes, cherished for its simple ingredients and warming qualities during cold winters. Split peas, affordable and packed with protein, combine with root vegetables and smoky ham or bacon to create a filling, budget-friendly meal. The beauty of this soup lies in its slow-cooked depth, a creamy texture with just the right balance of savory and sweet from caramelized onions and tender carrots. Often served with dense rye bread, it's a meal that satisfies hunger and soul alike. To make it, start by rinsing 1 cup of dried split peas and soaking them if time allows. In a large pot, sauté chopped onions, carrots, and celery in butter until soft and fragrant. Add the split peas, a smoked ham hock, or diced bacon, and cover with water or broth. Bring to a boil, then reduce heat and simmer gently for about 90 minutes, stirring occasionally until the peas break down and the soup thickens. Season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of marjoram or thyme. Remove the ham hock before serving, shredding any meat back into the soup. Ladle into bowls and enjoy with hearty rye bread, a true taste of Scandinavian thrift and comfort. Old Southern pinto beans and cornbread bake. Imagine a warm, bubbling casserole filled with tender pinto beans mingling with sweet corn and a golden, crispy cornbread crust, a true taste of Southern comfort and thrift. This one-pot meal was a beloved staple in many Southern homes, where beans and corn were affordable staples that could be transformed into a filling, flavorful dish to feed a family. Pinto beans provide hearty protein and fiber, while the cornbread topping adds a satisfying texture contrast and a touch of sweetness. The combination of slow-cooked beans with a simple cornbread batter poured on top, baked until golden, creates a dish that's both economical and deeply satisfying. To make it, Start by soaking 2 cups of dried pinto beans overnight and cooking them until tender, either on the stove or in a slow cooker. Season the cooked beans with sautéed onions, garlic, and a bit of smoked paprika or cayenne for a gentle kick. Pour the beans into a buttered baking dish. Prepare a basic cornbread batter with 1 cup of cornmeal, a cup of flour, baking powder, salt, an egg, milk, and melted butter. Pour the batter evenly over the beans and bake at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes until the cornbread is puffed and golden. Serve warm, letting the cornbread soak up the flavorful bean juices, a satisfying, budget-friendly dish steeped in Southern tradition. Italian fagioli soup with garlic and tomato. Picture a simmering pot filled with creamy cannellini beans, fragrant garlic, and bright tomatoes, all mingling in a light, savory broth that carries the heart of Italian, rustic cooking. Fagioli soup, beloved across Italy, is a simple, economical dish born from humble ingredients that transform into something nourishing and deeply satisfying. Beans have long been a staple in Italian kitchens, prized for their affordability and nutrition, while garlic and tomatoes add layers of warmth and brightness. This soup was often a weekday meal for families, filling bellies without costing much, yet rich in flavor and tradition. To make it, start by soaking 1 cup of dried cannellini beans overnight and draining them. In a large pot, sauté minced garlic and chopped onions in olive oil until fragrant and golden. Add diced tomatoes, fresh or canned, and cook briefly. Toss in the soaked beans, cover with vegetable or chicken broth, and bring to a simmer. Add a bay leaf, salt, pepper, and a pinch of dried oregano. Cook gently for about an hour until the beans are tender and the flavors meld. Remove the bay leaf before serving. For extra richness, drizzle with a splash of good olive oil or sprinkle with grated Parmesan if available. Serve hot with crusty bread, and you have a simple, thrifty meal that carries the warmth of Italian countryside kitchens. Hungarian bean stew. Imagine a rich, hearty pot of beans simmered with smoky sausage, onions, and sweet paprika, a dish that captures the bold, comforting flavors of Hungarian countryside cooking. This simple bean stew was a favorite among peasants and farmers, designed to stretch inexpensive ingredients into a satisfying meal full of warmth and character. Beans, affordable and filling, form the base, while paprika, a beloved Hungarian spice, lends the stew its signature smoky warmth and vibrant color. Sausage or cured pork adds savory depth, and slow cooking melds everything into a thick, flavorful broth. To prepare it, start by soaking 1 cup of dried beans overnight and draining. In a heavy pot, sauté chopped onions in a splash of oil or lard until translucent. Add sliced smoked sausage or diced cured pork, browning slightly. Stir in 2 tablespoons of sweet Hungarian paprika, allowing it to bloom in the fat before adding the drained beans and enough water or broth to cover. Season with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. Simmer gently for about 2 hours until the beans are tender and the stew thickens. Remove the bay leaf before serving. This one-pot meal is perfect with rustic bread and offers a delicious glimpse into Hungary's rich culinary traditions. Simple, frugal, and full of soul. Depression-era meatball and potato stew. Imagine a modest pot filled with tender meatballs nestled among soft, earthy potatoes, all simmered slowly in a savory broth that carries the warmth and simplicity of Depression-era kitchens. This stew was a clever way to stretch small amounts of meat, often ground beef or pork, into a filling, hearty meal that could feed a family without costing a fortune. Potatoes, the humble, poor man's bread, provided bulk and comfort, while the meatballs added just enough protein and flavor to make the stew satisfying. Cooked slowly together, the meatballs become tender, and the potatoes soak up all the rich juices, creating a one-pot meal that's both economical and soul-warming. To prepare, start by mixing ground meat with breadcrumbs or soaked bread, an egg, salt, and pepper, shaping the mixture into small meatballs. Brown them lightly in a heavy pot with a bit of fat, then remove and set aside. In the same pot, sauté chopped onions until soft, then add diced potatoes. Return the meatballs to the pot and pour in enough broth or water to cover. Season with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. Cover and simmer gently for about an hour until the potatoes are tender and the meatballs cooked through. Remove the bay leaf before serving. This stew is a timeless testament to frugality and flavor, a simple dish that warms both belly and heart. Amish pork and sauerkraut pot. Imagine a rustic pot simmering with tender chunks of pork nestled among tangy fermented sauerkraut, the quintessential Amish comfort food that marries simplicity with bold, homey flavors. This dish embodies thrift and tradition, making the most of preserved sauerkraut and economical cuts of pork to create a hearty, satisfying one-pot meal. In Amish kitchens, pork and sauerkraut were staples, especially in colder months when fresh vegetables were scarce. The slow cooking softens the sauerkraut's sharpness and tenderizes the pork, melding the two into a savory, slightly sour stew that warms from the inside out. To prepare it, start by browning chunks of pork shoulder or country-style ribs in a heavy pot to develop flavor. Remove the meat and sauté onions until translucent. Return the pork to the pot. Add several cups of sauerkraut, rinsed if you prefer a milder tang, and cover with a bit of water or broth. Season with pepper, a pinch of caraway seeds if you have them, and a bay leaf. Cover and simmer gently for about 2 hours until the pork is tender and the flavors have married. Remove the bay leaf before serving. This Amish pork and sauerkraut pot is a humble, budget-friendly meal steeped in history and heart. Southern chicken and okra stew. Imagine a warm, hearty pot filled with tender chicken pieces and slim, tender okra pods simmering in a savory, slightly tangy broth infused with onions, tomatoes, and a hint of spice. This Southern classic is a true testament to making the most of simple, affordable ingredients that deliver big on flavor and comfort. In many Southern homes, chicken was stretched with seasonal vegetables like okra, a beloved garden staple known for its unique texture and subtle earthiness. The stew was often cooked low and slow, allowing the flavors to meld and the okra to gently thicken the broth, creating a satisfying, rustic dish perfect for feeding a family without fuss. To make it, start by browning bone and chicken pieces in a heavy pot with a bit of oil or bacon fat. Remove the chicken and sauté chopped onions, garlic, and diced tomatoes until soft and fragrant. Return the chicken to the pot and add sliced fresh or frozen okra. Pour in chicken broth to cover, season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of cayenne, or smoked paprika for warmth. Cover and simmer gently for about 45 minutes until the chicken is tender and the okra has softened, thickening the stew slightly. Serve hot with cornbread or rice for a hearty, thrifty meal full of Southern soul. Midwestern hamburger and vegetable pot roast. Picture a hearty one-pot meal where ground beef simmers slowly with a mix of root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, and onions, melding into a savory stew that fills the kitchen with the smell of home and comfort. This Midwestern classic was born from a need to stretch inexpensive ground beef into a filling family dinner that required little fuss but offered plenty of flavor. In times when budgets were tight, ground beef was a staple, and combining it with seasonal vegetables allowed families to create a nourishing meal that warmed both belly and soul. The slow simmer tenderizes the meat and softens the veggies, creating a stew that tastes like a hug from the heartland. To make it, start by browning a pound of ground beef in a heavy pot, breaking it up as it cooks. Remove the beef and sauté chopped onions until soft and fragrant. Return the meat to the pot, along with diced carrots and potatoes. Pour in enough beef broth or water to cover, season with salt, pepper, and a pinch of thyme or rosemary. Cover and simmer gently for about an hour, stirring occasionally until the vegetables are tender and the flavors meld. Serve hot with crusty bread or buttered noodles for a thrifty, satisfying meal that feels like home on a plate. Scandinavian meat and root vegetable bake. Picture a rustic casserole where tender chunks of meat, often pork or beef, are nestled among earthy root vegetables like carrots, potatoes, and parsnips, all slow cooked together until golden and fragrant. This Scandinavian one-pot bake is a celebration of simplicity and thrift, reflecting a cuisine that embraces the humble harvest and the long, cold winters of the North. In many Nordic homes, such casseroles were a practical solution, using affordable cuts of meat and hearty vegetables to create a nourishing, warming meal. The slow roasting caramelizes the vegetables and tenderizes the meat, melding the flavors into a comforting dish that's both filling and economical. To prepare, preheat the oven and lightly grease a baking dish. Toss chunks of pork shoulder or beef stew meat with peeled and chopped root vegetables. Season generously with salt, pepper, and dried herbs like thyme or rosemary. Place everything in the dish and drizzle with a bit of oil or melted butter. Cover tightly with foil and bake at a moderate temperature for about 2 hours, removing the foil halfway to brown the top. The result is a fragrant, hearty bake that pairs perfectly with rustic bread or simple pickled vegetables, making it a thrifty yet satisfying one-pot meal. Depression-era liver and onions, one pot. Imagine a modest skillet where thin slices of liver sizzle alongside caramelized onions, their rich, earthy aromas mingling with a hint of sweetness. This simple one-pot dish was a common sight during the Great Depression, when liver, nutritious yet affordable, was a prized source of protein for families on a tight budget. Liver and onions might not be everyone's favorite today, but back then, it was a hearty, nourishing meal that made the most of inexpensive ingredients. The slow cooking tenderizes the liver and brings out the sweetness of the onions, creating a balanced dish that's filling and flavorful. To make it, start by soaking thin slices of liver in milk for about 30 minutes to mellow the flavor, then pat dry. In a heavy skillet, melt butter or drippings and sauté sliced onions slowly until golden and soft. Remove the onions and set aside. In the same skillet, cook the liver slices over medium heat for a few minutes on each side until just cooked through. Overcooking can make liver tough. Return the onions to the pan, stir gently to combine, and season with salt and pepper. Serve hot with mashed potatoes or simple boiled vegetables. This Depression-era liver and onions dish is a humble, thrifty meal full of old-fashioned flavor and history. Irish Colcannon casserole. Picture a warm, comforting casserole where creamy mashed potatoes are folded with sautéed cabbage or kale and dotted with bits of smoky bacon or butter, baked until golden and bubbling. This dish is a beloved Irish classic, born from the tradition of making the most of simple, inexpensive ingredients that could stretch to feed a family through cold months. Colcannon, traditionally a stovetop mash, takes on a new life in this casserole form. A hearty one-pot meal that combines the earthiness of cabbage with the creamy richness of potatoes and the savory punch of bacon. It's a dish that speaks of home, thrift, and the enduring spirit of Irish cooking. To make it, boil and mash about 4 large potatoes with butter and milk until smooth and creamy. In a skillet, sauté chopped cabbage or kale with diced bacon until the greens are tender and the bacon crispy. Fold the greens and bacon into the mashed potatoes, seasoning with salt and pepper. Transfer the mixture to a buttered baking dish and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 minutes until the top is golden and slightly crisp. Serve hot, perhaps with a simple green salad or leftover meat, for a frugal yet satisfying meal rooted in Irish tradition. Old German sauerkraut and sausage skillet. Imagine a sizzling skillet filled with tangy sauerkraut and savory slices of smoked sausage, the aroma rich and comforting, like a warm invitation from a German farmhouse kitchen. This one-pot meal is a classic from Germany's rustic culinary tradition, where simple, preserved ingredients were transformed into hearty, flavorful dishes that could feed a family without fuss or expense. Sauerkraut, fermented cabbage with a sharp, lively bite, pairs perfectly with smoky sausage, creating a balance of tang and richness that warms the soul. This dish was often cooked over an open fire or wood stove, making it a staple in frugal homes throughout the colder months. To make it, start by browning slices of smoked sausage or bratwurst in a heavy skillet to render some fat and develop flavor. Remove the sausage and sauté chopped onions in the rendered fat until translucent and sweet. Add a generous amount of sauerkraut, rinsed if you prefer it less sour, along with a splash of water or broth to keep things moist. Return the sausage to the pan, season with black pepper, a pinch of caraway seeds, and a bay leaf if available. Cover and simmer gently for about 30 minutes, stirring occasionally until the flavors meld and the sauerkraut softens. Serve hot with mustard and hearty rye bread for a satisfying, budget-friendly meal steeped in tradition. Cajun shrimp and rice pot, budget version. Imagine a lively pot where tender shrimp mingle with fluffy rice, smoky spices, and sautéed vegetables, creating a one-pot meal bursting with bold flavors, but made on a budget. This Cajun shrimp and rice dish captures the spirit of Louisiana cooking, full of zest, heart, and resourcefulness. In this economy version, shrimp are used sparingly alongside pantry staples like rice, onions, bell peppers, and celery, the holy trinity of Cajun cuisine, to stretch ingredients without sacrificing the dish's signature flavor. The slow simmer allows the rice to soak up smoky, spicy goodness, while the shrimp add just the right touch of seafood sweetness. To prepare, start by sautéing chopped onions, bell peppers, and celery in oil or bacon fat until softened. Add minced garlic and a teaspoon of Cajun seasoning or smoked paprika. Stir in 1 cup of long grain rice, coating the grains in the flavorful fat. Pour in 2.5 cups of chicken broth and bring to a boil. Add peeled deveined shrimp, fresh or frozen, and reduce heat to low. Cover and simmer gently for about 15 minutes until the rice is tender and the shrimp are cooked through. Stir in chopped green onions or parsley if available, and season with salt and pepper to taste. This budget-friendly Cajun shrimp and rice pot is a one-pot meal that proves thrift and bold flavor can dance together beautifully. Vintage meatloaf casserole. Picture a cozy, bubbling casserole where seasoned ground meat is layered with simple vegetables and topped with a tangy tomato glaze, all baked together into a hearty, one-pot comfort meal. This vintage meatloaf casserole was a beloved staple in mid-century American kitchens, prized for its ease, affordability, and ability to feed a hungry family with minimal fuss. Meatloaf itself was born out of necessity, stretching ground meat with breadcrumbs or soaked bread, eggs, and seasonings, while the casserole adaptation added vegetables like onions, carrots, or green beans to bulk it up further. The tangy tomato topping adds a touch of sweetness and acidity, balancing the rich, savory flavors within. To make it, combine a pound of ground beef or a mix of beef and pork with soaked breadcrumbs, a beaten egg, chopped onions, salt, pepper, and your favorite herbs. Press the mixture into a buttered baking dish, layering in diced vegetables of choice. Spread a simple glaze made from ketchup, brown sugar, and a splash of vinegar over the top. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 45 minutes to an hour until the meat is cooked through and the glaze is caramelized. Let it rest briefly before serving. This vintage meatloaf casserole is a nostalgic, budget-friendly meal that wraps family tradition, thrift, and comfort into one delicious dish. As we close the lid on this collection of forgotten one-pot meals, it's clear these humble dishes carry more than just flavor. They carry stories of resilience, creativity, and comfort passed down through generations. In kitchens where every ingredient mattered, these meals stretch scant resources into nourishing feasts, proving that simplicity and thrift can create something truly special. Today, as we face rising costs and busy lives, revisiting these recipes offers more than savings. It offers a connection to the past, a reminder that good food doesn't have to be complicated or costly to bring joy and warmth to the table. So whether it's a slow-simmered stew or a cozy casserole, these one-pot wonders invite us to slow down, gather around the stove, and celebrate the beauty of making the most with what we have. Here's to the humble pot that holds not just food, but history, heart, and home.